a woman is not willing to share a man unless he's got a lot of money, a lot of goats, a lot of cows, a lot of chickens, a good education, and a great, social status. So.
So if you were to believe the internet today, marriage is becoming absolutely obsolete. However, I don't necessarily think that's totally true. So in your expert opinions, what do you think is the future of traditional marriage?
Well, I think marriage isn't necessarily being what some people call being eroded. I think it's evolving. So rather than being an erosion, I think it's an evolution. If you look at traditional marriage over the course of millennia, for instance, before industrialized nations came onto the scene, monogamy was only 20 to 35% of marriages. Polygyny was the rest. So things change, and we're in a transition at this time when it comes to marriage because roles have changed between men and women. You've got medical advancement in contraception, which has changed everything. Mm-hmm. Women no longer home with children if they don't want to be. So there's a lot of changes that are happening. So I think marriage as an institution will always be here because as far back as we have records, it's institutionalized.
Mm. In hunting and gathering societies, everybody marries. And in fact, 86% of world cultures permit a man to have several wives, but actually less than about 25% of them actually have several wives. In most cultures, only about 5 to 10% of people have more than one wife at once because very expensive. I mean, a woman is not willing to share a man unless he's got a lot of money, a lot of goats, a lot of cows, a lot of chickens, a good education, and a great, social status. So, I mean, I'm an anthropologist, and I think human pair bonding evolved over 4 million years ago. I don't think that's going to change. We've got the brain circuitry for deep feelings of attachment. But I think that what we're looking for in a marriage is changing, and we're really seeing marriage become more flexible. Mm-hmm. And we now have civil unions in the United States, civil partnerships in England, de facto marriages in Australia, something called the Pax in France. It's very easy to get out of a marriage these days, and I think we're going to see marriage become more flexible. But today, 84 to 86% of Americans still do marry. Wow. And they marry in the traditional way. They're just marrying a great deal later.
In my work of the body-mind, I'm finding that I agree with you that it's evolving, it's being redefined, and I'm seeing more that when people are developing the inner self, as opposed to the hunter and gatherers that were just surviving, that people are really learning more in depth about who they are. And that's actually changing tradition in and of itself and allowing people to be mutually contributing to a new partnership that's really evolving in consciousness. And that's very exciting to be a part of.
Yeah, I wonder if the question really isn't kind of an oxymoron, meaning it's traditional marriage going into the future. To me, the future kind of suggests innovation and evolution, as you'd say, Steve. And just moving beyond the picture of our own society, it's interesting internationally, right, that Ireland just passed a popular vote. More than 60% of the population voted for same-sex marriage. Who would have thought that in a traditional country?
Well, I like that idea that what we're really seeing is a huge expanding pre-commitment stage before you marry. I mean, traditionally, marriage was the beginning of a relationship. Now it's the finale. Mm-hmm. What we're doing is we're finding out, we're having our friends with benefits and our one-night stands and our living together and just really getting to know the person before we marry them. And people think that that's sort of reckless. I actually think it's cautious. I work with Match.com, and we recently did a study of married people. And we asked them, among the questions I asked was, would you remarry the person that you're currently married to? And 81% said yes. Oh. And I think it is largely because we have this long pre-commitment stage so that we really get to know the person before you marry them. So I'm actually rather positive about the flexibility of the evolving marriage. It's a wonderful idea. The stability of it that we might be seeing down the road.
Traditional marriage, in my work, I measure in people 7 different attitudes, and one of those attitudes is called a regulatory attitude. It's a very black and white mindset. In other words, either or as opposed to both and. And that particular attitude is dropping more in America than any of the other attitudes. It's actually the lowest.
Wow.
Which means people do what's right in their own eyes today. In other words, however they perceive it, that's how they do it. So when I'm dealing with families where you've got traditional parents, you've got children that are coming up thinking, that's just not cool, whereas the parents are thinking, that's just wrong. Mm-hmm. And so that's changing, and we're finding that the living together stigma is no longer taboo anymore, like it used to be. And so people are starting to accept this because their mindsets are changing because of the cultural shifts that we're having.
So it sounds like the future of marriage is quite positive, and it sounds like 80+% of us still want to get married, even though we may be looking at more of an evolved marriage today.